Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
And for the 304th time, welcome to a MotorWeek podcast. Thank you, Alex Webb. Alec Webb. You'd think I'd get his name right after 304 podcasts, wouldn't you? I'm John Davis, and we're going to be tackling three new vehicles today, the GMC Canyon and another all-new midsize pickup, the Ford Ranger. Also, the Land Rover Defender 130, a new stretched model. With me today are Jessica Ray.
Hello.
Alex Kellum.
Howdy.
And Stephen Truitt.
Hey there.
And let's get right into it. Alex, you take the lead, the 2023 GMC Canyon, and it's all new?
It's all new. It's all new for 2023, new generation entering this whole mid-size truck craze. So I guess to start this off, so it's all new, and its main competitors, and I bring this up because its competitors are about to change as well. We're talking Ranger, we're talking Tacoma. Those are like the big two. You could also say Colorado, but that's all, GM family.
They're cousins.
So,
They're cousins, yeah.
It's not. It's like competitor, but like not really. Yeah. But yes, and I would also argue, and I'll get into this later, I would also argue competitors with full-size trucks even. And that's not necessarily because of the truck's capabilities, but because people in the segment looking to buy a truck, what they need it for, what they want to do, but don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, but you do realize that the mid-size truck of today is about as big as, say, the full-size truck, not too many generations ago.
I used to daily drive an F-150, a 97 F-150,
Right.
so
About the only thing they lack is width. But go ahead.
Yes.
I interrupted.
No, I'm here for the interruptions. Sometimes I need to be interrupted. So the new Canyon. Of course, it has grown. It's just talking about the looks very, very, very briefly. It's more muscular, a little bit more macho, if you will. And they really wanted to drive home this point of like off-road utility and overlanding capabilities, which everybody is saying these days. That's what everybody wants. But I do think the Canyon has really kind of grown into that quite well. But speaking of growth, that new that new look does kind of flaunt a new, more dimensions. So overall length, we're talking 213.2 inches. That's really only half an inch more, so that's not too crazy. The wheelbase now, it's about an extra 3 inches or so. So again, not too crazy. It is 4 inches wider, and it is now resting at a bare minimum with, I believe it's 9.6 inches of ground clearance, which before it was like 8.6 inches.
So I want to stop you right there.
Sure.
That's a lot of ground clearance. Is the whole concept behind the new Canyon to make it almost off-road capable right from the get-go?
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot.
Their whole point here is they really wanted to drive home that, like, this truck has that like off-road ruggedness that you could take even your base elevation and you could go take it off-road. But there are some trims that kind of sweeten the deal a little bit more, which I'll talk about in a minute. I have to say real quickly though, all those comparisons I just made with the size, how it's grown, that is compared specifically to the outgoing model if it is configured as a crew cab with the 5-foot short box. And I say that because the new generation Canyon is only available as a 4-door crew cab with the 5-foot short box. That is a trend we're seeing more and more. We can deliberate on that in quite a bit. There's almost no point comparing it. I have a comparison here to the Ranger real quickly. Ranger is 210 inches, 126.7 inch wheelbase, also a 5-foot bed. But the
That's
Ranger,
the existing Ranger.
The current, but we're about to talk about
I'll talk new Ranger
the
soon.
24 Ranger, so that comparison may not really stack up. Speaking to the ground clearance, I do also want to say that if you think 9.6 inches is a lot, the AT4X can go up to 10.7. That is from the factory. So if you want even more, you can do it. Also standard here, there's one powertrain. So there's no more options on which powertrains you want to get. You are stuck with one, but it is, in my opinion, quite robust. It's a 2.7-liter turbocharged inline-4. Horsepower, we're talking 310. Torque, we're talking 430 pound-feet, which is not too shabby. Towing is going to be up to 7,700 pounds. That is trim dependent. Most of them can do the 7,700, but I believe it's the It's the AT4X that gets down to like 6,000 and something, and the Edition 1, there is an Edition 1 AT4X if you want to go full bore. That's 5,500 pounds. And I want to pose a question to the group here because I don't know if I can answer it, or I can, but it's not a good answer. I saw some comments, not just on my video, but on articles and things that I'd read about the AT4X or the Canyon in general, about specifically, we're seeing these smaller displacement engines, in trucks, and they boast these towing like 7,700 pounds. And a lot of people are concerned that, are you straining a small engine by towing 7,700 pounds? On one hand, you have people that may say, well, that's what they rate it at, so that's what it can do. Other people are saying, yeah, but in the long run, it's not worth it. So have I opened a can of worms? Let's see.
The durability testing that they put these vehicles through, I mean, like 1 million miles worth of testing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I don't think any truck manufacturer would dare go that route unless they knew they could do it. And generally speaking, it's frankly more of a factor of the frame than it is the powertrain as far as durability. But I have to admit, towing that much with a 4-cylinder would give me a little pause, but it is the trend. I mean, the diesel's gone. So, and that, I think that was a colossal failure, which is unfortunate. So if you want a small pickup, you're going to basically get a 4-cylinder engine, and the tow and payload rating wars keep going.
I mean, I agree with John. There's a lot of durability testing that goes into these trucks, and there's also it's tow rated for 7,700 pounds, but that's like the maximum that the manufacturer is comfortable in, with warranties and stuff
Just
like that.
Because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly, of course, yes, but that also means that GMC is saying that it's safe to tow 7,700 pounds. And, usually with something, obviously 77 is its maximum tow capacity. That means everything in it also is probably upgraded. Its cooling is upgraded. So I think it's a little nerve wracking with a smaller engine, but just the fact that we're able to pull so much power out of these things and it's...
And are you going to do it every day?
And how often are you going to do it, right?
Yeah.
If you are, definitely go for something else.
Well, but you're getting to the point where 4-cylinder is about all your, it's going to be close to your only choice when you get to midsize pickups, just like the large pickups, like it or not, are heading towards V6 land, even with turbos.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
So anything else that struck you?
Yeah.
The interior has been is more than a generation ahead of the old ones.
So real quick, I should also mention about the powertrain because I left this out. Two-wheel drive is only standard on the base elevation. Just throw that out there. You can upgrade that to four-wheel drive, and then four-wheel drive is the only way to go on the other trims.
And I think that's partially in response to the smaller, to no more optional powertrains.
Yes,
They're giving you more grip at all four corners.
Absolutely.
Especially for people that like to use them for boating and so, and even RV towing.
Absolutely. And I had a chance to drive every single one of them. I did drive in as base as you could go or practically go in an elevation. And yeah, it felt fine. But that four-wheel drive system in this, I mean, to me, if you're going to get an elevation, if you're going to get one upgrade on the build sheet, I would say four-wheel drive. Speaking to the interior, it has been kind of revamped. It's definitely, I mean, to me, GMC I've always looked at as a premium offering to, what Chevy's putting out. And certainly with this one, you get that. So standard on all of them, for example, is an 11-inch touchscreen. You get all the nice touch points. Even the cloth seats in the elevation, which I want to say is the only trim that you can get cloth. I could be wrong in that. You may be able to get them in the AT4, but it was all very, very nice. They all also have digital gauges. Now this is where they start to get different. The elevation and the AT4 start with a smaller screen. It's not small, but it is a little smaller, I think 8 inches. Then when you step up to the Denali and then you go to the AT4X, you get an 11-inch digital gauge cluster there. So I'm personally a fan of digital gauges. That's just me. And then I keep teasing it. I keep talking about it. Let's just really quickly go over the AT4X. This is the oh my God, like I gotta go off-road every day. I want it. This has got everything you could possibly want. So you're getting like front and rear e-lockers and stuff. And for those that don't know, I should have prefaced this, and I apologize. Think of AT4 as GMC's like off-road offshoot. Then think of AT4X as taking a Denali, which is like their premium offshoot, and like fusing it with the AT4. So you're getting a premium off-roader. That's why even though you've got 17-inch wheels with mud terrain tires, and you've got the DSSV dampers and stuff like that, you've also still got heated front seats and all those nice amenities. I said that was the top of the line, and I sort of lied. There's an Edition 1. So if you want to go even more full bore, bed rails, light bar, safari bar, B-lock capable wheels, and my favorite thing, not only are there underbody cameras, but the underbody cameras have a washer function built in.
That's
you
cool.
press a little button on the screen, and it washes them. It is. I always find a gimmick with these cars. You know I do, and that's the gimmick, and I love it. So last but not least, let's talk pricing. The GMC Canyon starts at $38,000. That's for an Elevation with two-wheel drive. AT4 starts at $45,000. Denali at $52,500. AT4X at $57,000. And if you go Edition 1, it's like mid-60s. It's up there, but it is one of
mid-60s for a mid-size pickup
and
truck.
that's where I wanted to bring in, competing with full-size truck, not just because of price, but I spent a whole day out on the trail in this AT4X, and I had a ball. I had a great time, and to me, that truck was better suited for that environment than a full-size.
Oh, absolutely.
truck. So the point that I want to bring up is that, if you want a full-size truck, or like Steven alluded to, if you know you're going to be towing like thousands and thousands of pounds every day, go full-size. That's great. I'm not going to tell you not to. But if you're in the market for a truck, you don't know, do I need a full size? Do I need a mid-size? What of these do I need? What do I want? Be very honest with what you're going to do, the level of utility you need. Really look at the numbers. And then I think a lot of people out there that are undecided, may lean towards a mid-size. Partially that's because mid-size are, big now and all that. But be honest with the level of utility you need. I think if you get a midsize, you'll have a whole lot of fun, just like I did.
I would assume that Chevrolet with the Colorado is going to fill in some of the lower trim level needs.
Sure,
and this is exciting because GMC is finally doing with the Canyon, differentiating itself from the Chevy Colorado, basically saying we are a premium brand, so let's start up level and go from there. I think that's the very good point.
Yes, because there is a WT version of the Colorado,
The good
which is
old work
the
truck.
work truck.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's turn to an off-roader of a totally different color. 2023 Land Rover Defender 130. And okay, Stephen, what does the 130 mean? You had the 90, you had the 110, now you got the 130. Take it away.
Well, if you couldn't guess, it's bigger. So, essentially,
Well, that's interesting because the differentiation between the 90 and the 110
Correct.
was the 90 was 2 doors, the 110 was 4 doors,
Yes.
and had a longer wheelbase. But that same jump of 20 numbers doesn't necessarily apply here.
correct. So it is actually on the same 119-inch wheelbase. You just get 13 extra inches of overall length. And on the inside, you'll get a third row included with that.
A usable third.
Usable third row, yes. There are other third rows that I think are laughable, but that's neither
Well,
here
the
nor there.
110 third row is not very useful.
Right.
So
yeah, let's talk a little bit about looks. When the new Defender first came out, a lot of the purists said, that's not a Defender. Give us the old vibe. We want the old school look. I will say the 130 with the extra length to it, it looks very awkward and bulbous, in my opinion.
Its profile is not the best.
It is
I will
not.
agree.
because it's got so much rear overhang.
Yes.
So with that though, the inside capacity with all 3 rows folded down, you get 80-ish cubic feet of storage. I don't have the exact number.
It's
80.9.
It's a very, very, you get a significant gain in cargo capacity, particularly behind that third row.
Yes, very much so.
Good support vehicle for road tests.
Oh, that thing came in handy quite a bit, I'll tell you.
Except the seats don't fold flat, which I saw one article was saying now, campers out there, if you think you're going to use this as instead of a tent, you're going to have to do some modification in there.
True.
But so it's not, let's say, like a crossover with all this flat floor, but you still can get an awful lot of stuff in there.
That's true, very much so. So with that, we can talk about some powertrains a little bit. Do you have a little bit of you have a couple good options. You have a 2-liter inline turbo 4-cylinder making 296 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. Excuse me, I can't talk. Our tester had the 3-liter inline 6 turbo with a mild hybrid system. And then there's also a supercharged V8 that's available, making just shy of 500 horsepower. Right. I will say regarding our inline turbo 6, I couldn't tell that there was a mild hybrid system in there, honestly.
That's the point, I think. Yeah.
It's aid you mostly when it comes to electrification around the vehicle, and also maybe a little extra when you're getting off the line. I mean, it is indeed a mild hybrid system.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know what a mild hybrid system is, it's just you have a 12-volt battery, but in a mild hybrid, you also have a 48-volt battery, which helps to assist in smaller electrical functions,
right.
accessories, partially like with like being at idle and stuff like that. So it kind of, what the point of it really is to take a little bit of the load off of the engine to allow the engine to function better. So it kind of, in a lot of cases, I would my experience in a mild hybrid is it's like kind of like smoother in certain transitions.
It's like almost like a sophisticated, a very up-level alternator type system.
Yes.
Yeah. But it does improve fuel economy a little.
Yeah. So as far as some other things within the car, the one thing I had never really had much experience with a Land Rover. I've been in the Range Rover that we had for testing. That was the first Land Rover I'd been in, and the inside I was blown away by space. Oh my goodness, you can do anything, and I understand why so many people have the craze with Land Rover to be like, yeah, we're gonna get this and we're gonna use it to its full capability and use it for what it's intended to. And with that, by the way, the terrain options for drive modes, you can go over anything in that thing. I was blown away by the amount of selectable options that you had. But anyway, so the one thing about the interior is the infotainment that I just did not like. There are so many sub-menus to it.
It takes a lot of menu diving in all of the Land Rover, Range Rover products. They're you almost need a degree in order to
Land Rover certified.
A lot of tech.
Yeah.
I think
it's gotten better. I think, to be fair with them, they've gotten a lot better, but it doesn't compare with some of the easiest to use systems that we see. So,
and obviously we have a certain perspective on it as well, because we are only in these vehicles for a certain period of time.
We don't really learn them with it.
Yeah, like we unless if we keep a car for a weekend, you kind of live with it. But if you keep a car for a night, you don't get to live with it quite as much as the typical owner.
But I think your point's well taken, that really when you start ranking vehicles that out of the box are capable of doing just about anything on any road, Land Rover as a brand can't really be beat, I don't think. And the Defender is kind of like the hallmark of that. So.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I actually had more time off-road in it when we were shooting the little off-road segments around the station here in Owings Mills. I was impressed. I don't even think I really had it in any sort of special mode.
I think you would not find anything right around here that would be capable of stopping that vehicle.
Precisely. But even so, like, whatever it went over, it tackled it with ease, and I was happy with it.
Let's talk about some everyday things, though. What about drive comfort? You spent a lot of time in it. Did you find it's a vehicle that capable that you could feel comfortable driving every day?
That was going to be my next point, and thank you for that. So, yes, I think it would be something I could drive every day. While it is a large vehicle, I found it is not overly wide. I just thought it was school bus length. Not like
I would agree with that. I drove it home one night, and I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's coming from a dedicated Jeep owner. So
I've driven big trucks my whole life. Yeah. So.
But in terms of it's quiet on the inside. The dampening is fantastic. You can go cross country in that thing without a blink.
It's a nice addition to their lineup, and I think it's actually going to sell very well, because people that want to put that kind of money into an off-roader want the capability.
And speaking of money, with the price, it's a very wide range of pricing. When you start looking at a 130, you're looking at just over $70,500. It starts at that, and then what is the top trim? Anyway, it tops out at $118,000. So it's a very
No wonder
wide
people
range.
say they can't afford cars anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't really shock me though, because when I look at what's it competing with? Something kind like a Grand
G-Wagon.
Wagoneer,
Yeah.
or a G-Wagon, or an Escalade. Yeah. You're kind of in that wheelhouse.
You're in the six-figure area, or very close to
But
it.
if you're literally going into the Land Rover dealership and saying, hey, I want a Defender 130, no options, give me the base model, $70,000, that's not horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a lot of car for 70 grand.
It is a lot of.
I think that will stoke a lot of controversy among our listeners of whether that's horrible or not.
Thank you, Stephen.
But, yeah.
Public service hours have been met.
I'm not saying $70,000 is cheap, but for what the vehicle is.
Well, I'm not grilling
No,
you
we
on-
know, we know. We know.
No.
Any other comments before we move on?
No,
Good?
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to hold off on our review of the 2024 all-new Ford Ranger until later in the podcast. But we are going to tackle next our lightning round. And basically, we want to see what everyone's got to say about this. And this is a story that made national headlines just a couple days before we did this podcast. S&P Global Mobility recently released a new study that shows the average age of a vehicle on American roads is at an all-time high, currently 12.5 years. That's up from 12.2 a year ago. And I should add that that's up from 9 years in 2000 and 7 years old when this show went on, the MotorWeek went on the air in 1981. So for perspective, we're looking ahead and thinking, what do you think this continued upward trend means for the future of car buying and car ownership in this country? And you have to throw in now with all the electrification that's coming, is that going to have an impact? So far, about every 20 years, we've added about 2 years to that number, 7 to 9 between 81 and 2000. But now we're accelerating, it looks like. We're up to 12.5. Do we think that's going to keep going up at a faster rate? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it definitely is going to go up at a faster rate. We're kind of at this weird place right now where, I mean, all right, so new cars are expensive, right? People are buying them, but they're still expensive.
And the old ones are more reliable.
The older ones are more reliable, but used cars are still very expensive. You are not getting, it's hard to get a bang for your buck when it comes to a used car, which was something you were able to do 5 years ago.
That's what you did. You
so-
allowed the first owner to take the major part of the depreciation, and then you picked up from there.
Exactly, right? Buying a car was all, how many times have you heard somebody say that you lose what percentage the minute you drive it off the
20%.
lot? And it's not like that anymore because we are just in this weird place with the way that manufacturing is going and such. And of course, with cost of living, et cetera, I can imagine this number is just going to continue to grow. And I say that as a person that owns a 15-year-old Jeep. And I also just took ownership of a 17-year-old Nissan Altima to supplement, the mileage on my Jeep. So, I think we're going to just see this number keep going, especially as people want to keep people who aren't in situations which they can have an electric vehicle, like myself. It doesn't make a lot of sense. They're very expensive. In the next 5 years, I imagine we're probably going to see closer to maybe 13, 14 years.
Does anyone think it's going to depress new car sales further? Because people are holding on to their older cars.
Absolutely. I mean, people are priced out of the new car market. People are priced out of the used car market right now. To me, the best car you can buy is the car you can afford to pay in cash. But that's a whole other story because
That's a hard one.
yeah, people.
The average price of a new car, the average transaction price of a new car today is now about $48,000. We're closing in on $50,000.
It's hard to stomach. That's hard to stomach. I mean, and having worked in a dealership, I didn't work on the sales side, but I kind of got a little bit of a glimpse of it. Between interest rates and the cost of the new car alone, I just don't know how some people do it. I really don't. And then when you go buy a
7-year loans is how they do it.
and well, as we talked about a little
And I
bit
wonder
earlier
if
today,
we're not going to see 10-year loans.
you mentioned 10-year loans, and that's a very
relatively
distinct
soon.
possibility. And if businesses want to continue to sell these cars, they're going to almost have to, because people can't stomach a $800 to $1,000 a month car note.
Alex, anything?
I think next time you buy a car, whatever you buy, I hope you like it.
But you're going to be giving it for a long
have it
time.
for a while.
It's going to last you for life. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's all I got. I mean, like, I'm right there with you. I can't buy a new car, and I'm not rushing out to trade mine. But also part of that, I have to look at the bright side, because you know me, I'm the most positive person in the office. My car, for the most part, has been pretty reliable. I had to have a water pump replaced at like 83,000 miles, and that was whatever. But that's like the only major maintenance thing I've had. So I have to wonder if part of this is also because maybe reliability is on the up and up,
Yeah.
So,
And we can thank, Frank, you can go back to the 60s and thank the Japanese imports for that.
Yeah.
Sure can.
I mean, I've told
Thanks,
you this
Japan.
story before, but we had a 1964 Ford four-door sedan hardtop, and by 20,000 miles, virtually everything in that car was worn out.
Oh my gosh.
And that was a long time ago, mind you, but still. I think there's some other ramifications of this that are really disturbing right now because the supply chain still isn't fully back. Parts for older cars are harder to get right now. And that's leading insurance companies to often total cars after relatively minor accidents that prior to the pandemic they would have fixed. So we have a dilemma with one aspect, people are keeping their cars longer. In another aspect, certain parts, notably exterior and cosmetic parts, are still difficult to get only 7 or 8 years out of production. Somewhere, this is going to spawn more of an aftermarket for replacement parts. Otherwise, we're going to end up, 20 years from now, looking something like we hear Cuba looks like, where people have lathes in their backyard making parts.
Let me just get my
their
3D printer and get my replacement part.
Well, there you go.
Well, it's funny that you say that, John, because this is kind of a slight tangent, but one of the things that I'm dealing with specifically on my Jeep is some of my modules, the computer
electronics.
components. So a couple of years ago, and I'm glad it happened a couple of years ago, my ABS module died. Which means I didn't have ABS for a couple of weeks. And at the time, I was able to get a brand new module. They still made them. But now, they're back ordered till who knows when, and they just don't manufacture new ones. So you have to, sometimes your only option is to take your module out of your car, send it off to someone, have them rebuild it, send it back to you.
I think that's going to become increasingly an issue with all the electronics.
Yes.
Think about all these electronic touchscreens that we're dealing with. How long are they going to stay available?
And how will they age, right? 10 years from now, will they even be usable in your vehicles, right? Are they going to be fast enough for how you need to use them or for all the over-the-air updates that it needs? Yeah, it's a very
brave new world, everybody.
Nerve-wracking world, for sure.
Thank you very much. That was a very good lightning round. Before we go any further, I want to thank our advertisers once again, Lucas Oil Products, the Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper folks, and of course our oldest advertiser, the great folks out at TireRack.com. Thanks you all for making MotorWeek in all of its forms possible. We're going to move now to an email from a viewer, and this is a good one because I want all of you to have fun with this, and that's exactly what the question is. What is the most fun part of your job on MotorWeek? Why don't we start on this side? Alex, you go first.
The most fun part of my job is sharing an office with you, Stephen. It is every day you come in with your lunchbox and everything. I'm like, there's my boy. He's here.
It's always very depressing when you're not in the office. And
I thought you were going to say it's depressing when I am there. And I'm like, yeah, I bring it down.
We're not going to talk about that part.
No, most fun part of the job, in all seriousness, of course, track days are a lot of fun, but that's kind of like a basic answer. Honestly, the podcast, I have a lot of fun doing this.
Wow.
This is a lot of fun.
Well, that's good. That's really good.
This is, I get to be funny, which is one of like 3 things I got going. So I'm pretty, you know, I get to put on all my dating profiles. I'm on a podcast, and then in parentheses, like, no, I'm not a podcast bro. I have a salary. I promise. You know, it's the whole thing.
I'm actually like, that makes me happy to hear. Obviously, as a podcast producer, I'm doing something right.
Steven, what's the most fun part of your job?
I'd tell you, one thing that I didn't think I'd have the opportunity to do when I joined the team was the press trips. I get a good out of the press trips. It's not so much, you know.
Had you done a lot of traveling before you came to MotorWeek?
The first time I was on a plane,
I remember that.
Was when I went out to California to drive the new Kia Sportage. That was my first time on a plane. That was my first time traveling that wasn't the East Coast.
Yeah.
That was my first time anywhere. And
wow, there's another country out there.
I know, right? That's what I hear.
There's a bunch of states in between, too. It's wild. It's so crazy.
There's a lot of fields and cows and corn.
All those maps and geography, they weren't lying. Like, it's
That's what I hear.
It's cool. It's cool. One day we'll do a road trip.
That sounds good. Maybe we'll do it for work.
But you're involved with the day-to-day testing of all the vehicles.
Yes.
Everybody wants to know, is it fun driving all those vehicles?
It's fun, but at the same time, you can find yourself getting confused with all the different infotainment stuff. Because it's like, okay, one day you're in a Honda, the next day you're in a BMW, the next day you're in the Range Rover. And it's like, okay, where are things?
Yeah, where's this? How do I turn it on? How do I shift into drive?
Oh, that happened in the Bentley today. I took a solid 3 minutes.
People don't realize that most of our test cars come without an owner's manual.
Correct.
Yeah.
Either it's been taken out because they think some journalist is going to steal it, which they do, or some journalist stole it.
Literally throw the keys, figure it out.
Right.
My favorite one was that Aston Martin we had in the other week. Not the DBX, that like older one. The 2009. It was
that we used for the intro.
Yeah.
Dave's like, hey, can you put it around the side? I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's like, all right, so and I'm like, all right, it's a process. It's a process to start it, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, the key goes in one way. Then you got the paddles, you do that. There's a button. Then you do the paddle again. And I'm like, all right, okay, all right.
But yeah, this job has had me do some very cool things that if you would have told me that this would be what I do for a living, I would not have believed you. So I'm very thankful for it.
That's very nice. Okay, Jessica.
Oh, it's a hard question because there's so many fun parts to this job. Obviously, like the travel's very fun. I mean, I think I have to say that the track days are the most fun because I'm not a person that particularly like is a thrill seeker by any means. But when I'm able to like push a car to its limits on the racetrack, I get like this like euphoria that I'm just like,
it's a high.
I never searched for anywhere else. But when I am doing like when I'm on a track in just a fantastic car, like everything's going right and well, and I feel like I'm driving like I'm in the most control. There's really something special to that. I think that has to be the most fun part about it.
I'm an old line television producer. I've been producing television shows for 50 years, basically. And I have to tell you, the most fun part of the job is seeing all the pieces that all of you and everyone else on the staff work so hard on every week, the testing, the editing, the videotaping, everything come together into this lovely package that fits into basically, 26:46 time, 26 minutes and 46 seconds every week, 52 weeks a year. And we go out and we push the show out and we get emails and Facebook comments, mostly good. Mostly good.
Yes, mostly good.
People generally appreciate what you all are doing. And I sit back and I think my job is complete. It's fun to see it all come together into this great effort that you all put so much heart and soul in. The rest of it, car driving, the travel, it's all fun. But it's that final product that we produce every week, Bob, that really makes me, gives me a high. And I thank you all for it.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, let's wipe the tears from our eyes. And we've got,
moment.
We do have one more car that we're going to take a look at. One more vehicle, really. And this is a new generation of the Ford Ranger 2024. Jessica, take the lead, and this is going to open up a can of worms, so go ahead.
Yeah, so new Ford Ranger is here. I was very fortunate to be able to go out to Detroit for a day to actually see it in person, sit in it, touch it, feel it, that whole thing.
Embrace it.
Yeah, embrace it. Didn't get to see it drive or anything, so we just have the details on all of the specifics of it. So Ford calls the Ranger the F-150 of the world. This is an incredibly important product for them globally. It's
Yes.
made in like 5 or 6 different places across the globe. So for them, and you know, this might not come to a surprise to anybody, but the previous generation that was revived here in about like 2018, 2019, that truck really was not made for North America.
No, it's a little bit too narrow for North America.
It was very much the global product.
Very big in Australia and Asia.
Yes, yes. And so with this new generation, this is definitely made for the North American market more than it has been in a long time. And previously, you know, the truck has been here for a couple of years, but it was already an aging platform previously globally. So it's been due anyway, just in the entirety of the world. So when you take a look at it, it's much more macho. I would say it's not as macho as the GMC Canyon, and I think that works for it because this is a Ford, you know, like this is a Ford Ranger. It's meant to be a work truck and for people to use it for truck things. So it's definitely more macho, but not super macho. Mostly it's just kind of got like, it's squared off a bit. It's a little bit wider. It's about 2 inches wider. And they've played with the dimensions because the wheelbase stretches about 2 inches as well. But the overall length pretty much stays the same, which I'm fine with. I don't think these things need to be that long.
They don't need to be. They certainly don't need to be any bigger.
No. And so with the way that they adjusted the wheelbase and also made it wider, they took the front axle and I believe they moved it forward a little bit, and that's why the wheelbase is a little bit longer. And they also moved all the axles a little bit more outward, so that allows for them to put larger powertrains in the engine area. And so when we talk about powertrains, we do have the carryover 2.3 liter EcoBoost. That was 270 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. That was the same. It's the same engine, same specs, that whole thing. But now we actually have a V6 option, a 2.7 liter EcoBoost, and that has 315 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. So kind of the opposite of what the Canyon is doing, right? They went to one singular powertrain. The Ranger now has 2.
Plus, there are plenty of spy photos floating around about something more.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, and like the Canyon, this is also currently at this time, now we don't know what their future plans are, but at this moment, it's only available in the Super Crew 5-foot bed configuration. So that's 4 doors, 5-foot bed. They no longer have, I think it was the Super Cab, which is the
Stretched cab.
Yeah, the stretched cab. So really, you can only get it with the 4 doors.
They were doing about 85% in crew cab anyway. So
Yes. So what does that mean? So what that means is that the maximum payload capacity goes down 100 pounds to 1,800 pounds of payload. And that's for the 4x2. So that's the 2-wheel drive version of it. And that's because with the way that all the weight kind of disperses in the truck, you can't put more payload in it because the entirety of the truck is bigger, right? I think it's still. I think 1,800 pounds is still respectable.
what's the bed length?
So the bed is 5 feet, and what they did is, like I said, it's 2 inches wider. So they adjusted the wheel wells so that they are wider, and now you can fit 4-foot
Ta-da.
wide drywall in there, which is important. Right?
That's been that's why a lot of people have stayed away from the midsize
Yes.
trucks. They couldn't get that, 4x8 sheet of plywood in there. So
the usability of the bed is much better. Up to 7,500 pound tow capacity. The standard is 3,500. lots of cool stuff. They say that this is the most tech-savvy Ranger to ever exist, which it's true. It's got a ton of stuff. It's got like Pro Trailer backup assist, a integrated brake controller, that sort of thing. But of course, the interior is like much nicer than the last generation. It now features that portrait screen that Ford uses. And a digital, and now like everything is like digital now. So the gauge cluster is digital. It has this new portrait screen. They did not take like the rotary shifter or anything. You have, in the lower trims, you have like an actual shifter. And then in the upper trims, you have this thing that's called an E-shifter, and it's kind of like a slider.
Right.
So like it feels very truck-like inside still. It's like truck-like. I will say one thing that did confound me is that the rear seats, now they have like storage underneath the rear seats, like you can lift them, there's storage underneath, but you can only fold them flat. There's no 60/40.
Really?
And so a lot of people are like, that's an odd choice. Ford is usually on the mark when it comes to like
So they're not split. So you got a solid bench in the back.
You have a solid bench in the back.
That is odd.
So I mean, I didn't ask anybody about it, but to me, I'm thinking, okay, maybe like it could have been like a price thing that they decided to compromise with that, or maybe that's something that has to do with the global market. I'm not sure. But yeah, you can fold it flat, and there's a lot of usable space that way, but that means that you can't have anybody back there.
You can't do like 3 people and then fold it partially down.
No. So that's a problem. I think that's like one of the downsides, one of the cons I can see to this truck. But I will say, I mean, it starts at like $34,000 after destination, which I think is like fine, except for a like F-150 kind of starts around that area. So, I mean,
that's always been the argument, and why
tough.
that's why they discontinued the previous Ranger, the one I own, the compact Ranger, because they said that they couldn't build it and price it without butting up against the full-size truck.
Yes.
It cost almost the same to build.
Well, the next Raptor model I'm going to talk about, Raptor model, Ranger. I keep saying interchanging Ranger and Raptor and Ranger Raptor. Anyway, there's a Ranger Raptor, okay? And it's the first Raptor for the Ranger here in the U.S. Now, it's existed in other markets before, but this is the first stateside. And this has, so it's not like, as we see the F-150 Raptor, which kind of like has like the same powertrains as a normal F-150. You kind of have to go up to the Raptor R to kind of get some real power. So the Ranger Raptor has a 3-liter twin-turbo V6 for 405 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. So that's a pretty significant jump from what you can get in the standard Ranger. And of course, you get lots of like off-roady goodies. It's beefier. The fender flares give it a like 3.5-inch wider track. You have a Watts Link suspension in the rear, which is supposed to be better for like heat reduction and cornering and stuff like that. You've got 17-inch beadlock wheels. And one thing that was really cool when I saw it in person that I had to do a double take was that these wheels were wrapped in these all-new BF Goodrich KO3 tires, which people like the BFGs because they're like one of the best, people consider like the best all-terrain tires. And right now you can only buy the KO2s. Everybody gets the KO2s. But now we have the KO3s, and there's like no information available about them. Like they've been revealed on another GMC product, I believe the Sierra HD, but we know nothing about them. So the Raptor is wrapped in these cool KO3 tires, which look really good. And of course, your interior is like top of the line, right? You get pretty much every option, and then you also have orange accents, sports seats,
The best part.
paddle shifters, that whole thing.
Any reaction from you guys on the Ranger? What you've seen
you guys
so far?
Ford guys.
Yeah.
I dig
Darn
it.
tootin'.
I dig it. I dig it. I will say, you mentioned the starting price for it being around, what, like 34, 35?
Yes.
But that is, with a 4-door, short bed. The F-150, while it may start in like the mid 30s, that's for a single cab, two-wheel drive.
Work truck.
As soon as you go for
Sure.
comparable.
You're probably about like 40 or low 40s, yes, for the F-150.
It's just the price for me for when you get into a Raptor. It's like,
which Raptor starts at just under $57,000.
I want to stop a second. Okay, we already heard that Canyon is going to crew cab only, and Ranger's crew cab only. And admittedly, about 80% or more of all pickup trucks are crew cabs.
Yes.
4-door, full 4-door, not extended cabs. But I'm not bothered by that as much as I am with that is the reduction in bed length.
Yep.
We've gone from 8 to 6 and to 5. We've got some 4.5s running around.
Yep.
And you're starting to say, well, it's true. People are not buying these things as pickup trucks anymore. I know there's a prototype or a concept running around on spy photos that shows the new Ranger with a 6-foot bed, but they haven't said whether they're going to make it or not. Is this a trend? Are we actually giving people what they want? What about the folks that just want a work truck, the simplest vehicle they can get with the longest bed they can get? Is anybody listening to them?
I don't think so.
It doesn't seem like they really are.
I mean, the thing is, what a lot of people may not know is like you can still get, like Alex said, a single, or like Steven said, a single cab, F-150. And actually, when you look at it, the dimensions are like reasonable. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's not a big, huge, humongous truck. So you can technically still buy them, but it takes more effort, right? And people are like, oh, I'm not going to go order one. Or maybe that off chance I have to put somebody in the seat behind me, that I have more than 2 people with me. I mean, I kind of have some blame to the manufacturers here, though, for just completely obliterating that part of the segment, which, if the comments on the internet are to be believed, people are interested in something like this.
I think less than a 6-foot bed is almost useless. I really do.
I would tend to agree with that.
Even though they're deeper now and you can get, volume-wise more in it. But it does seem to be that with all the new model proliferations, we're actually limiting the aspects that make a vehicle usable. You're saying you can only have one cab style, you can only have one bed length. Mm-hmm. Not everybody's listening, I know, to that, but it does seem that most manufacturers are doing it because, A, they make more money by having fewer choices, less complexity on the assembly line, and that's what the buyers seem to want. But us old schoolers want more choice.
They're going to sell them
more
either way.
choice.
I agree. Well, I guess we'll find out what the future of the Tacoma holds on our next podcast. We'll definitely talk about that.
That may be a surprise or two.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap up this podcast. I want to say special thanks to everyone that joined me today. Our digital producer, Jessica Ray, our writer, Alex Kellum, and our assistant road test producer, Stephen Truitt. Thank you all for all your great comments. And for the folks behind the scene, our audio engineer, Austin Harris. Thank you, Austin, for making us sound better than we have any right to. Jessica, again, as our podcast producer, and our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. Thanks to all of you for listening to our podcast today. You've shown us how popular they are, and we appreciate it. By the way, if you're wondering what time MotorWeek, the television series, can be seen in your local public television station, go to our all-new website at motorweek.org. Click on the tab Watch MotorWeek, and you'll see how to easily find when MotorWeek is broadcast in your area on your local PBS station. You can also stream MotorWeek episodes for free on your mobile device or streaming box by downloading the PBS video app. Also on our website, you will find links to our YouTube channel and to our cable partner, MAV TV. In short, folks, if you've got a screen, you can watch MotorWeek. Till next time, I'm John Davis. Thanks to everyone for being a part of MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil, Auto Value and Bumper to Bumper, and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.